I found myself, though, that even though I was using drugs, alcohol, even in college, I did in such a way that I didn't do it on the weekend. I mean, I didn't do it during the weekdays, but I did it on the weekends, you know? So not realizing that though I may not have received any, I was still able to do things that I needed to do, you know, do my schoolwork and everything, but it still was setting up for me. It was setting up the addictive cycle that on the weekends I began to do something to my escape, you know, and my way of escape was what I sort of do party and do drugs or party and do substances. So I didn't even realize that because I wasn't taught anything different, I did the same thing that they did, you know. And it didn't cause a huge problem necessarily when I was in college. I graduated from school. And then after I graduated from school, I came home to DC in the club scene, same thing, drugs and alcohol. I became involved with those things, more of recreational. It wasn't something at that time that became an issue on as far as life changing in that aspect of it. As a matter of fact, I got married, and when I got married, we were in the church. And then when I got married, very quickly for at least I want to say 11 or 12 years, there was no drinking, there was no smoking, there was no secular music. I was in ministry. I mean, absolutely, and I had not even thought about it. You know, it was a, it was a, it was a life change. But the issue became after I got divorced and when I separated. That's when once again I be I became more vulnerable, and the reason I became more vulnerable because I was alone. I was by myself. I'm used to being in family, you know. And so when now I go from a husband to a father, now I'm a single man. And what happened? What I realized what happened is when um, I'm used to, when things change in my life and when things are not secure in my life, that's when I am more probable to go back to old vices to help me get through my whatever I'm dealing with the change, with the adjustments that I'm trying to make in my life. You know, trying to re-identify who I am because as I've had identity issues regarding. I remember when I first got married, my wife, she had to go out of town, right? And when she went out of town, maybe the first 7 months of being married, it was almost when she left, and we had one child at a time. It was almost if I forgot who I was. It was like, okay, if I'm not a husband, I'm not a father, then I was like, who am I? Like here I am once again, alone. And when I say alone, meaning that no one to help identify who I am. Okay, because when my father, my children help identify who I am. When I'm a husband, my spouse helped identify who I am. When I'm alone, I go back to that same. What I realized, that same young little boy who was a child, who had issues of abandonment. You know, I didn't get into that, but even when I was younger, I mean, there were times when my mother left me in the house. Sometimes my father alone, who was under drugs, drunk, would leave me there. She would tell me where she was going, but it still was abandonment. And so, anytime when I'm not alone, I become this not a little disoriented. I'm not saying disoriented, but I have to say, okay, who am I now that I'm not a husband? You know, who am I? I'm not a father. So that's when I had to go back. Okay, I'm a man of God. You know, I'm a man of character. Um, um, okay, so let me get back to that. So after I got married, we got divorced. That's when I went back into dealing with drugs and alcohol. I had to go through my process. All I knew, my family and friends, all I knew was that's what people did, use drugs and alcohol. So what I began to see that drugs and alcohol, mainly drugs, began to impact my life decisions. Okay, I wasn't, I was no, I wasn't no longer able to handle being productive in the area of work and using drugs and alcohol and moving forward. When that began to happen, I sought out help. Thank God, a good friend of mine, Sam, and he'll come on later. He had been in a program for probably at least about 7 years at that time. And as a matter of fact, I was actually going with him. Like, say for example, when he had his anniversaries, I would go to the anniversaries to help him celebrate his anniversaries. So I was aware that there was support out there that could help me. Um, Also, another thing I neglected to mention, me coming up during the time of AIDS and HIV, and many of my friends passed away, had died from AIDS, and HIV. So many of them, they were not around. Um, and the mere fact that I experienced a lot of death um, at an early age, it caused me to be fearful of where would I go. Second example. Oh, I just got lost. It made me become fearful of how long would I live. Um, it, again, I had issues of shame, and like I said, being alone and I just what was your question? Okay, so after I received help. I went through different programs. Um, I was in NA for I want to say a couple of years. I came out of NA. What I do today is I ask myself anytime I'm ready when I feel like going back to the old Chris, how is this going to impact your life? I'm able now, instead of being very spontaneous, what I do is I have learned to stop and say, okay, look at the whole picture. Okay, I know that I see the beginning. Yes, you get high, and many times when I did use the drug, I wouldn't say I used to call people. I wouldn't call it a drug of choice. I would call it the drug of death. Because remember, it's not a choice. It have I have seen it destroy people's lives as it continues to do so. But I would ask myself, Chris, if you use this, the beginning, how it's going to affect you 2 days from now? How will it affect you if when you're under the influence of this, are you able to be there for your children? Um, so what I had to begin to do is I had to look past me and I had to look past this moment and say, okay, Chris, if you want a future, because I had seen many friends and relatives allow this drug to take over their lives, I had examples that I knew that without a shadow of a doubt, if I continued to go down the road that I was going, I wouldn't be here today, to be honest. And so I sought out help. Um, Presently, I have a life coach now. I'm in therapy now, and I remain close to those people who are conscious of the dangers of drugs and alcohol, and make sure that I'm more. My choices are different on the people that I hang around, the people I date, because I know the dangers of how how it stops my potential, and also because I have a huge desire to help other people, that there would be absolutely no way that I can help and assist other people if I am being controlled by drugs and alcohol.
So, Chris, what were the drugs of death that you talked about? I know that you mentioned alcohol. What things did you experiment with, and for how long, and how did you move past some of those things?
The drug of death, I would say it was crystal meth. Um,
And
it's now usually it never got to a point whereas like some people have different bodies, right? And so some people would go as far as they lose their houses, they lose their jobs, relationships, family, things such as that. Um, I used it for years. I used it for years, but in such a way that it only during the summertime.
mm,
Um, you know, it. Oh, and then let me tell you once again what it mimicked. Because I began to look at it. Wait a minute, Chris. It mimicked the same way when I was in college. When I'm when there's things that I have to do, working to focus or whatever the case may be, um, I do what I need to do. Then the summertime, that's when the time I went wild that I wanted to do. That began the same thing even after I became an adult. But what began to happen was my summers got longer, meaning that, say for example, I might would use until I knew that, around September or August I need to stop, right? What began to happen was the summer began to last a little longer, meaning that when I should have stopped around August, I may still been using around September, October, November. Okay. So what I realized was this. I had to be honest with myself, like, Chris, this thing is getting out of control. And so because when I'm not able to do my job, if I'm not able to go to work, if I'm not able to help those who have been sent to help, I need to change, you know. And so only because of my how I felt, how passionate I felt about my job and what I was doing, I believe that's only one of the only reasons that motivated me to seek help so I could not allow this to continue or to ruin my life. Um, yeah.
so we had a question from someone that's watching.
Mhm.
Kayla, what was the question? So, what was the most helpful thing that helped you to recover?
First, my faith that I had from an early age, my belief in God and knowing that He cared for me. One scripture stood out was, is this scripture says that God says, I come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. I knew that that was not me comparing what God said I should have with what I had. I knew something was wrong. So therefore, I knew, wait a minute. He said I should have life. This is not life, so I need to get help. So that was number one. The second thing was NA and going to people and allow myself to be vulnerable and admitting I need help. You know, um, you know, there's an old saying like a closed mouth don't get fed. Uh, or also me understanding the scriptures that says, confess your faults one to another that ye may be healed. I use the scriptures and I use the body of Christ, because most of the people in the body of Christ to help to assist me in this battle, because I knew I couldn't do it by myself.
So,
You
how
know,
hard is that, Chris? How hard is it to expose yourself to be vulnerable to other people who see you one way, right? They see you coming to wherever you are, your church, with your family, with your kids. How hard is it, and what was it? What did you use to help you get past that place?
it it's very hard. I'm gonna tell you why it's very hard, because many times people would later throw it back in your face, like once you confess, open up. Also, it's hard because I've been in situations that people would use it against me if they knew that this was a vulnerable issue, I would have people after admitting it, whatever, they'd try to give me some, you know. So it is difficult, but it's not as difficult as not trying to better myself. You know, it's not as difficult as not doing anything and knowing and see yourself going further, doing things that you know that's not you. So, also understanding this, not thought to myself, not believing there's something internally bad about me because this is what I'm dealing with. That's it's kind of hard because there's shame. There's a lot of many times there's a lot of shame around drug abuse and alcohol abuse. And instead of seeing it as a disease, we look at people like either they're lazy, or we look at they have weak character, they don't want to do any better, and because I've heard this said about other people, see, that makes it even harder because wait a minute, if I hear you talking about call that person a crackhead, if I'm struggling with crack, and if that's how I hear somebody else talking about it, I am less likely to admit that this is the issue I'm dealing with because I already hear the attitudes of the people about that particular issue. So when we talk, when we say that's a crackhead or look at that drunk, and not realizing the people who you're talking to or maybe overhearing is dealing with that, may deal with that same issue. What it did for me was it paralyzed me, or slowed me down from being open and honest about what I was dealing with. But because I love my life better, and I know that I want to live, I did not allow what people talk, would say to stop me from moving forward. And because it wasn't new, because, by me coming up as a Sam Gender Lover, being called a sissy and all these things as a little boy coming up in Southeast DC, being called names, at that point, it didn't hurt as bad. I had developed some, thicker skin, and mostly because once again, I tell you, I could not have made it by myself. I had people, pastors, I had people in church, brothers and sisters, people who would continue to encourage me, and people who were in the NA program would continue to encourage me,
So, Chris, thank you. It's funny because you're so great to interview and talk to, because you don't know this, but the co-hosts behind, we're talking to each other, and there's like, he's answering all of my questions. I had a question I was going to ask it. He's answered it already. So that's really great to talk to you, and thank you for sharing. And I'm going to invite Raven and Tawana to jump in here. I've got one other question. You mentioned being a parent, and what did you pass on to your children, or what would you say to people with children now, or to people that are young people that might watch the show who are dealing with that from their families? What would you say to young people about drugs and alcohol and the experimentation that many people will do throughout their lifetime? What would you say about that to them now that you have had this years of experience, and you've got children and a grandchild, right? So what do you say to them? What would you say to people now?
Well, first I would say that children do what they see. Like I said earlier, when we had kids, the first 11 years, there was no drinking, there was no smoking, there was no drugs. So they didn't come up in an environment as young kids with them being exposed and seeing this as being, number one, something that's okay to do on a regular basis, or they didn't see it also as being and use it as an escape. Okay. So first I would say whatever you don't want your kids to do, don't do it around them. Number one. But also what I had to do was I had to be, and I am, honest with my kids. You know, I many times we'll talk about their grandparents, and we'll hold them in high esteem as far as, you know, your grandmother's a strong woman. She did you know, but I also have to say, wait a minute, but your grandparents, you come from a generation of people who deal with substance and alcohol abuse. This, and I tell them, this is how your mother, this is how your mother died, your grandmother died. I also have continue to tell them my story. This is, even though you may not have seen me like this, this is what I have struggled with. As a matter of fact, I think when I had my 1 year anniversary, 1 year of clean, and that was the first time my children, they actually came to, my two younger children, they came to the they came to the event. And the first time they heard, that was the first time they heard things about me that they had not heard about, things that I had exposed. And after it was over, actually, my younger daughter, she came and first of all, she cried. First of all, to hear what the people had said, the type of man I was as far as pressing forward to change. But they also heard the story of what alcohol can do, and that it does, drugs and alcohol can destroy your life, you know. And we continue to have that conversation, because it's not like it's over, you know. It's not like that my children don't deal with drugs and alcohol. So because of my experience with it, instead of me being the type of accusatory, a judgment, I understand that the experimentation of what you may be dealing with. But let me tell you, what you're experiencing is just the beginning. I know the beginning, the middle, and the end. So I talk to them about the middle and the end. You know, how when you're under the drugs and alcohol, your thinking may not be as clear. Your judgments may not be as clear. Like I did things when I was under the using substances that I would not have used if I wasn't. So I began to let them know that when you're using this, you may do things that you may be ashamed later. So what I try to do is I try to show them the whole picture now, but it's still up to them if they want to seek out themselves their own experience. But one thing I do is I tell them so much, because when they're ready to talk, or if they ever get in that situation, they already know that my father, he's not going to judge me on this. And not just that, my father understands it. He understands addiction. And so I want them, and many times I want people to know that I tell my kids, there are very few things, not that I'm proud of, there's very few things that I haven't done, you know, that I haven't experimented with. So anything that you say is not going to, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, how could you do this? You know, because I've been through it, you know, I've been through it because of the environment that I've come around. Now, it doesn't, I think it also makes it a little less painful when if I see my children, them experimenting in these particular areas. And the reason why is I look at it like this. Instead of me looking at, oh my God, like it's over for them, I look at, wait a minute, if I made it through this, because I just call it life experiences. This is a life experience. If I made it through life experiences, why do I believe that they won't overcome this same experience as well? You know, so I'm their biggest supporter, but I want to be their biggest, have enough information. I don't learn just enough for me. I learn for them, and I learn for other people. Because of, and also that, and I want to be able to speak it in the language that they understand. So what I purposely find myself in situations whereas I may be around people who are younger, just to see how they're dealing with things, what they're dealing with in their language, so I can be able to, if asked for support or some, I could be there to help guide them through this particular journey. Because one thing I realized, like, I can't stop anybody from using a drug or alcohol. All I can do is give you my experiences, and it's left up to you what you want to do with that. But many times people don't get the whole picture. Many times we don't share the whole picture. And once again, if you just look at me, see me on my job or see me in church or things such as that, you may not would have any idea the things that I have been through, and therefore you don't have a true picture of what life is. Because many times when we don't share, we allow the other person to think that they are the worst, because they know their story, they know maybe how many times they have fallen or how many situations they found themselves in and made bad mistakes, and they judge themselves harshly on that. But all they know about me are the good things. When I allow that to go on, I'm doing injustice to those people because I have them to have a raw view of who I am. And so that's why many times I purposely share areas of vulnerability and weaknesses so the other people who are struggling in those same areas won't feel like they are the only ones and they can't get through this.
And Raven, Chris mentioned something earlier about the weakness. Sometimes people might see this as a weakness. And from your experience as a certified addiction counselor in both DC and Maryland, and your 25 years of experience in this, Raven, can you talk to us about this idea of weakness? How do we move people from this belief that there's something about people's character that's weak or something in them that's weak? What have you found about the people you've worked with over the years, Raven, and what is Chris saying that's inspiring you? You're muted again, Raven. Something happened with your line. You're on mute. There you go.
Christopher, I first want to say that I enjoyed your story and your experiences and your transparency. But everything that you talked about, I mean, these things lead up to what's socially deemed as weaknesses. First of all, you had a very high regard for your father who worked in the ministry. And so when he became an alcoholic, that was something you had to adjust to. So, and then, your mother, you said, worked in the government for years, but she was what they would call a functional alcoholic because she drank, but she went to work every day. So they call that a functioning alcoholic because I'm drinking, I got a problem, but I'm still getting my responsibilities and my needs met. So a lot of times that surfaces up. And then, of course, you have the peer pressure from college. Everybody in college is drinking and drugging. And so, hey, I'm trying to be a part of. I'm not feeling good because, I was taught that, the people in the ministry didn't behave this way. I look at my mother as another kind of figure. She's doing well, but she still got some alcoholic issues. Then, of course, when they passed, you got grief and loss issues. You have identity issues because of your divorce from your wife. Now, who am I? I'm not a husband. I'm not a parent, everyday parent anymore. I mean, what's going on with my life? Now we got an identity crisis. All those things I would have to say, I've learned in my tenure working professionally as well as personally, are damaging to your self-esteem. When your self-esteem is damaged or compromised, then the value of your lower self rises. And now we're looking for, and you talked about it, an escape. Drugs and alcohol is one of the biggest escapes. You got drugs, you got alcohol, you got gambling, you got promiscuous sexual activities, overeating. I mean, shopping with money that you absolutely don't have, running up credit cards. So all of these things that are a quick fix for the moment, for the moment. And so these are called weaknesses because, I mean, ultimately, you don't feel good about yourself. So I need something, or I need somebody, or I need something to help me feel better right now. Right now. And so these are the things that I think you're asking me about where the weakness comes from. The weakness comes from what I would say the low self-esteem because of the events in my life that have been overwhelming that I don't know how to deal with. And I'm around unhealthy people that cannot teach me how to deal with it because they're dealing with their own issues that have allowed them to become out of character. And so now I'm trying to adjust to that because those weren't the values that I was taught as a child. And so now I have to do what society has taught me to do. So society has taught me that drinking and drugging and acting a fool in the street and developing a lifestyle with unhealthy people is normal.
Yep.
And so now I submit to that and I become an addict and I become an alcoholic and I do things that's out of character for me and I compromise my self-esteem some more. And after you get to the bottom, you're almost willing to do anything to feel better. And sometimes it's sad, but it can lead to suicide because at the end, things stop working. The alcohol stops working. The drugs stop working. All this is the temporary solution. Shopping, overeating, sex, or gambling, all this stuff, it doesn't work anymore. I mean, you could feel bad on any given day, and you can go to the store and buy the most wonderful outfit that you can afford. You put that outfit on, and after you take that outfit off, you still felt like you felt before you even bought it or put it on. Because the outfit can only fix you for a minute. And then you go get a haircut. And you say, wow, this haircut looks good. And one person say, wow, that haircut looks terrible on who cut your hair. Now you had 10 people tell you that haircut was all that. And one person can say, wow, he missed a spot back here. Do you know this is just not right. And then you fall right back into that because the haircut is not going to work either. The food, whatever it is. So I'm thinking the weakness comes from unresolved, addiction stems from unresolved issues, whatever they are, unresolved issues. And if you don't have healthy people in your life, in your space to help you go through that, then you have to go through whatever you think may work. Like I said, the peer pressure, all of the things that overwhelm you, your self-esteem. Maybe you're not good in school. You may not be good in several areas. I mean, several areas. Maybe you're not making the money you want to make. Maybe your life isn't unfolding the way you need it to unfold. So we have many variables that can come together and damage your self-esteem. But when your self-esteem is damaged, then you're trying to be a man, or you're trying to be a woman, or you're trying to be a better person. And so how do I do that? So after I exhaust all of my best thinking, okay, well, now I'll result to what the world is doing because they appear to be having fun. They appear to be not having the issues that I have. So when people are getting high, it looks like they are having the time of their life, drinking and drugging and laughing and acting the fool. But we're not listening to the stories that follow that. When your life starts falling apart, when you start falling apart, when you start compromising your self-esteem and your self-worth, and your own identity of who you used to be. Then you have to walk around masking who you are, and you have to figure it out, and you have to disguise yourself. So you're putting on a different mask and a different costume every day. So I think that's where it starts. What I wanted to say, Chris, before I pass it to my colleague Tawana, is that I'm very interested in. I'm grateful. Let me say that you found the other side, that you came into the program, you got some help and all. I'm curious about why you stopped going, why you stopped coming, because I hear that you're still, being very influential out in the community, as well as with the younger people and your children and all. But the people in the program, in Narcotics Anonymous and in Alcohol Anonymous, would need you as well. And I'm wondering why you stepped away, because that will also, your story, your experience would benefit them. But the helper needs help too. Every therapist needs a therapist. You know what I'm saying? So it also would continue to help you to be at your best, to be there for someone else. So I'm wondering why you stepped away.
Okay. I stepped away from the program because of the structure. Well, there are people in the program who I still talk to, who I get, and I always hear come up with Sam. So even though I may stop going to the meetings of the program, but I'm still in contact with people who are in the program, mainly Sam. But I didn't want to continue to go to like 3 days a week, as well as I stopped going to the program because I want to utilize also other areas of support that's out there, spiritual, maybe groups. I didn't just want to use NA, because for me, there's more than NA. NA brought me to a place and an understanding, and they'll always be there. But I did not want to cut off that there are other opportunities or other resources out there that can assist me in what I'm dealing with. And also, when I say what I'm dealing with, I believe the organization can only deal with so much, but there are other areas of my life that I need to go to other places to get help and assistance with. I don't have a problem with the program. I just stopped going to the program on a regular basis. And I utilize other therapists, life support. Therapists, life coaches, or other resources that continue to allow me to evolve in other areas of my life. That's one reason. That's the reason why.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm really glad that you are going to therapy and all, but addiction, the whole pot is like Prego. And so I do understand that there's all types of ways to get some help, but maybe, I'm just hoping that you reconsider coming back, because you have a knack for wanting to be there for other people. And, so maybe you might want to consider coming back and doing a little bit of it all. The steps come from the Bible, so that's already church related.
Okay.
And so, the bottom line, it's free therapy. And then you get to meet a lot of other people to be supportive of, and a lot of other people to support you. So it's just a suggestion if you might want to reconsider coming back.
Okay,
just a thought.
I stay open to that. And if there's a particular home group or whatever, you can suggest, we can talk about that. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Well, thank you. Tawana, you had a comment?
Yes, I just want to say thank you, Christopher, for sharing your story with us. And everything that you said was beautiful, honest, and I just want to point out where you mentioned the presentation of your mother showing up to your track event. That part right there, I think, is quite touching. From both standpoints, the child and the mother. So any of the parents out there, watching this, I hope you guys take that nugget that although your child may be coming to you, and with their embarrassment, their anger, their, whatever, they're going to remember, like Christopher said, they're going to remember when they become an adult that at least you were there. So I just thank you for sharing that however long it took you to come to that point, that you did. And it was important that you shared that.
And one other thing I want to say that keeps me from going back. I never wanted to leave the legacy of my kids or my legacy that this is just me. My father died of an overdose. Or the conversation, anytime my name come up, it would be, he was a crack, whatever, alcohol, whatever. Because I know how that felt. I know how it feels to have the legacy, to have your parents, to carry that shame. You don't carry just yours, you carry their shame and their shame. And because I understood that pain, I did not want to give that to my kids, And so, one thing real quick, I remember one time my mother, she was drinking, and I took the bottle and I started drinking. I was like, first of all, I said, stop drinking. I said, why are you drinking? She said, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm hurting myself. And I said, Mom, first of all, you don't live in a vacuum. You don't live by yourself. You're hurting other people because what I'm watching is not stop the drink. She said, stop, don't drink. I said, why are you stopping me? She said, because it's harmful where you're drinking. I said, but the same way how even though it's hurting you by what you're doing, the same way what you're doing is hurting me, And so, one of the biggest things that for my kids, I remind them every day, they're my gift. Because I know that many times I said no for them. Because I knew if I did something and they found out, the shame that they would have to deal with is almost for the rest of your life. Like even the other day, I saw a young woman. There's no way, there's never time that I could see a female who's under the influence of alcohol and not think about my mother. Never. And every time I see it, every time either I have to forgive her again. And I have empathy. The wonderful thing is, I don't look at this woman, she's a drunk. No, that's my mother. And so the experiences that I've had, I don't discount them. As a matter of fact, I embrace them because it has allowed me to to have empathy for other groups of people that if I would not have had that experience, I wouldn't have that empathy for them.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. There have been a couple of comments, and Eric Williams is a comment. I celebrate your personal journey and how you are seeking diverse outlets to support your sobriety. There is no one way to wholeness. Eric, you are absolutely right. We are, and so we celebrate you, Christopher, and thank you for being with us today and for sharing your story and your journey. You are, and we've had several of these over the last couple of months and a few months, and thank you for sharing, because this is the kind of thing we're trying to do to really enlighten and expose to the world and to people what's really going on, what are the real stories about people, not those things we read about or we hear about, not those made for TV movies or the whatever, but real stories that are happening to real people in our communities right now and that have happened, so that we collectively as a community can move past the stigma and the shame and the blame and the guilt associated with mental health or substance abuse issues, and people can get the help that they want and that they need and that they deserve, and that you all know wherever you are that you are loved and you are amazing, and that there is great potential for you to be all that the world needs for you to be right now and all that God is calling you to be. So thank you so much, Chris, for that. And we are going to transition right now to our next guest for today. We have another program. Thank you so much, Chris, for being here. And hopefully we'll get you back towards the end of our cycle. And but right now we have another guest coming, and we want to tell you again who we are. We are Inner Light Incorporated, and we are doing this program called Thrive Live. And we are talking to community people who have lived with or lived through or are living through issues around or situations regarding mental health, substance abuse, substance use, addictions, and the opioid crisis. This program is sponsored in part by the DC Department of Behavioral Health and Health HIV and a grant from SAMHSA. So we are so excited to be doing this, and we are going to bring in with you now our next guest named Sam, and Sam is going to come and share Sam's story. Hey, Sam, how are you?
I am blessed and highly favored. I just lost you guys. Hang on. Okay, there I am.
Yeah, you are. It is good to have you with us. Thank you for agreeing to come on.
Sending me a text message, and I'm like, I'm here.
Well, thank you for agreeing to be here and to share your story and your journey with us. Again, my name is Reverend Darryl. This is with me, my co-host, Raven Luckett, who is a certified addiction counselor, and Tawana Lee, who is also a master social work licensed graduate social worker in this field. And so we're happy to have you with us, Sam. So, if tell us what brings you to our forum today, and tell us your life and your story, and how can we impart some support to the community out there.
Well, thank you all so much for inviting me. I am so honored to be here. Again, my name is Samuel Harrison, and I am grateful for the gift of recovery. My clean date is October 16th, 2008. This coming October, I will celebrate 13 years of sobriety. Clean, serene, happy. And as my motto is, I am living my best life 24/7. To get here, to say it was easy would be an understatement. I am I don't even know how many generations. I'm a Pentecostal preacher. I was born and raised in church. Probably, I often say I was literally born on the altar. I don't know much outside of church. And my life began and still remains in the institution of the local church. But I became a preacher. I don't even know where to start, so let me just start here. I became a preacher when I was 13 years old. I became a preacher when I was 15 years old. And I've been preaching now for well over 40-something years. It's hard to keep those numbers together when you go past those numbers. But in the midst of that, one of the things that I began to develop was this attraction to other men. And as a result of that, one of the first things I began to hear was, God loves you, but God hates faggots. God hates sissies. And so my journey was a real challenge because I was preaching God loves you, but I really didn't believe that God loved me. And the challenge was trying to balance spirituality, Christianity, and my attraction. And most people who know my story know that it was very unsuccessful. I lived such a hypocritical life most of my young adult life. And I was told that, if you get married, you won't be gay anymore. And so, of course, I didn't want to be gay anymore. And I needed, this connectivity that I had in my religious environment. And I got married at the age of 22, I think it was. And not knowing a whole lot about anything, but, I'm just not going to be gay anymore because it was just so horrible. It was so hard. And there was such conflict in my life. And that monogamy lasted probably 3-4 months. And I spent 17 and a half years in the bondage of marriage to a beautiful woman. And we were blessed with 2 magnificent children in that marriage. And I can say today that in those 17 and a half years, I think I may be able to put 12 months together of being faithful. I actually can't say it was a whole year of just being committed to my marriage. And back then, uh, it was called the DL life. I call it the dog's life. And I went back and forth in and out of relationships, and I began to pastor a church uh, several years ago, and as a result of pastoring that church, the struggle just became greater because not only did I have a family that I was not committed to, I was also not committed to the tenets of my faith, and the commitment to uh, my Christian upbringing. And it just became a absolute nightmare. And as a result of being in and out of those relationships, I contracted HIV, and actually had to come home and tell my wife that I was HIV positive. And we had had a sexless relationship for several years by this point, but by law and my medical advisors told me you have to communicate this to her. You still married to her, and the law requires that she get tested. So we went through this whole process, and it was in that moment that I started realizing I can't continue to do this to myself or to her. She deserves a life better than this, and I deserve a life better than this. And now I'm contemplating divorce, raising children, having to admit all of this to my congregation. And to say my marriage was good is a lie. It was horrific. And she was just traumatized all the time between the lies, the confusion that I was dealing with. And I had no understanding. Mind you, I've been in therapy, in and out, but I really had no concept and understanding of the mental health crisis I was in, let alone the trauma I was inflicting on her. So I got divorced and moved to my own home. And here's where my addiction begins. I've always had a sexual addiction, but I met someone and he introduced me to drugs. I may have smoked a little weed here and there, but he introduced me to powder cocaine. And from the introduction of powder cocaine and the dysfunction of my sinuses with powder cocaine, he was going in and out and staying out for a long period of time. I thought he was cheating. He was actually doing drugs. And one day I found what I now know was a crack pipe, because I had never even seen a crack pipe. And I told a friend about it. He told me what it was, and he told me what my partner was doing. And I confronted him. He said, yeah, I'm doing it. And as time went on, I suggested to him, maybe you should just do it here where I can monitor you. And the monitoring turned into curiosity. And the curiosity turned into experimentation. And when I started experimenting, it was, in no uncertain terms, an instant love affair with crack. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. It was the answer to everything I had been missing all those years singing in the choir and preaching around the nation. This was the answer for me. I was sick of church. I was sick of church folk. I had ended my pastoral responsibility. And excuse me one second, I don't want my computer to go, and I kicked the cord out. Sorry about that. I ended my pastoral responsibilities, and I finally came out of the closet. Now, mind you, it was a very small closet for me to come out of, but I did come out of it nonetheless. And now I'm just going to live my life the way I decide to live it. And I really don't care what anybody else thinks about it. As he and I got heavy into drug addiction, I eventually got rid of him and kept the drug habit, because it was a lot easier to afford my drug habit alone and not his. And there is where the journey to deprivation began for me. I did not know there was a hole in the bottom of my bottom. I just did not know that there could be life any worse than what I was actually living. I was a firefighter for Montgomery County Fire Department, EMT firefighter, on my way to becoming a paramedic. And I had a vicious drug habit because I made a lot of money as a firefighter. I made a lot of money. And every dollar that I made went to me getting high. My children were neglected of my attention and company. Everybody who knows the life of drug addicts, you know, children are at the least of the priority chain. Paying bills and being attentive and those kind of things are at the bottom of the list of priorities. My only priority was finding ways and means to get high. And those ways and means turned into everything. And I mean, I have a multitude of stories during that season of research and discovery that led me to doing things, selling my body, giving it away, because for a long time I didn't know that I could actually make money doing it. And one of my transgender friends, at the end of my story, and I'll allow you guys to ask me the questions, but at the end of my story, I'll stay here. I was in the height of my addiction. I was probably making about $80,000 a year, and I remember when I got my income, my W-2s, and saw how much money I made, and I literally could not have $1.75 to buy a bus ticket, a bus transfer. I did not, and I looked at it and I realized I had nothing to show for it. By the end, I was homeless, hopeless, helpless, and hungry. And my dear friend, who is no longer with us, she was also in addiction. She was transgender. And she said to me, "You were just simply not built for the streets." I was living at a bus stop on Walters Lane and Pennsylvania Avenue, the K-12 bus stop. And my last effort was I had ran out of money. I ran out of crack, and I had run out of a place to stay by this point. I was homeless. I had been evicted. I had no job anymore. That's the short version of it. But the breaker was living at that bus stop, and I was hungry. And the only alternative was the McDonald's trash can across the street. And it was in that point that I realized she was right. I was simply not built to live in the streets. So the breaking point for me was homelessness. That's what drove me in. And she pointed me in the direction of an organization. I'm already starting to cry. She pointed me in the direction of an organization called Transgender Health Empowerment. And those ladies loved me enough to get me help. And they pointed me to APRA in DC. And they told me that they'll get me into treatment if that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't prepared to be crying, y'all. I apologize. I'm just so grateful.
You're being real and live your life, and we love it. And it's no shame in this game at all. We are being proud of you, and thank you for sharing. So, you know, tears are clarifying and cleansing, and so don't worry about it.
These are absolute tears of joy today. But she pointed me in direction THE. And I'll never forget Erlene Budd. I was so hungry. And she had a big old bowl of spaghetti. If y'all know Erlene. She had a big old bowl of spaghetti. And I just kept looking at it. She said, "You want some?" And I said, "Yeah." And I literally ate the whole bowl of spaghetti. I was so hungry. And the night before was the first time I'd ever slept in the shelter. I slept at the Adams Street shelter. I was terrified that the men were going to rape me and all this kind of stuff. You know, I'd never been in a shelter before. I'd never eaten at a soup kitchen. That morning, I got on the bus and they took me over to some, and I had my first and last meal in a soup kitchen. And I went to APRA, and they said they didn't have any beds for me. And I called my friend Diva, and I said to her, I don't know what to do. If they put me out of here, I know I'm not going to come back. And she told me to tell them, this is exactly what tell them you're going to kill yourself if they don't find you a place. And I absolutely told them I was going to kill myself if y'all don't find a place for me. And they reached back out to THE, and THE found a bed for me at Regional Addiction Prevention. And as a result, I went to Regional Addiction Prevention on the 16th of October, 2008, and began my recovery journey. And it was hard. It was tough. But I found a community of people who loved me. And I stayed in the process. I made a multitude of mistakes, having sex in the treatment center, lying, manipulating, all the things that addicts do. But I eventually found out that those were the skills I used to survive on. And when I met the clinical director, Dr. Barbara Musgrove, she said to me, I'm going to help you learn how to live and not survive. And she gave me a book called The Shack. And she said, I don't want you to come back to me until you finish reading this book. Somehow she connected to me. She's a deacon, and she knew I was a preacher, and she introduced herself that way. So it was our connectivity. She gave me this book, and this book changed everything about my life and what I view God as. And if you all know the story or seen the movie, it changed my whole perception about God. And I had known God my entire life. But this was different for me because now I was beginning to see how much God loved me. And that's where my journey began. I went through the transition process. I connected to community services that enabled me to get back on my feet. And I'm so grateful for all the resources that RAP reached out, that RAP helped me attain. I began to discover mental health services and the need to combat depression and anxiety. And once I started connecting to mental health services, Dr. Musgrove, RAP stayed with me through aftercare programs. I got involved in the Rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. I had one sponsor. It didn't really work for me. 6 months into my recovery, I met another man who remains my sponsor to this very day. It was there that I met the same gender-loving community in recovery. And I met all of these gay people, all these transgender people, all these lesbians who had these wonderful lives of recovery. And then I started meeting other people who were involved in church who lived lives of recovery. And one person said to me, he had one leg, he lost his leg in his recovery process. But we were standing outside of a meeting one day, and he said, Sam, a grateful addict will never use again. And for some reason, it hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, if you can maintain gratitude every day of your life, you'll never go back to using drugs again. And I asked God to do two things for me. Don't ever let me be ungrateful, and don't ever let me forget that bus stop and that trash can. 13 years later, I'm celebrating all the gratitude for what God has done for me. And I'm looking at a picture, y'all can't see it, but I'm looking at a picture of that bus stop and that trash can that sits on my table that reminds me every day where God has brought me from. So I'm here today to testify that any addict, regardless of where you are in your station in life, anybody can overcome the disease of addiction by the grace of God. And one of the first things that I began to understand in my process was that for me, I had to maintain a spiritual connection. That was my process. So I reconnected to a church that was affirming, and I'm still there to this day. And I've gone on to reclaim all of what I knew in ministry times 10. My children are back in my life. I have a magnificent job. I have the best life I could have ever imagined. I didn't even know life could be this good on this side. I just never even imagined it. And so that's why I announced that I'm living my best life 24/7. It just gets gooder and gooder and sweeter as the days go by. I have no complaints. The worst issue in my life is my gray hair. That's the biggest challenge I have. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to let y'all say something because, as you can see, I have the gift of gab because I'm a preacher. So
no, this is great. We are grateful for your comments. I want to just once again introduce my two co-hosts. Tawana's disappeared on us, but Raven Luckett is here, and she's a certified addiction counselor, and she's
Raven.
And I'm glad to have her and Tawana Lee, who is a mental health therapist also, who will hopefully be back with us in a moment. She was having some problems with her connection. But we're grateful that you're here. I'm Reverend Darryl Moch, and I'm with Inner Light Ministries and Inner Light Incorporated, our Thrive Live program. And so, Sam, we are grateful that she took the time, and I want to say hi to Kayla in our background, helping us with tech questions, and then helping us with our tech. But Tawana is back, and so Tawana's missed a little bit of it. She lost her connection, but you're back. And so, Tawana, any thoughts? How does Sam's story hit you, and how do you reflect on that in light of the work that you're doing right now in mental health as a therapist?
Thank you, first of all, Sam, for sharing your story. You may have said it, so sorry if you did, but you had mentioned that you were in and out of therapy. Mm-hmm. What was the reason why you were in therapy early on? Because it sounded like maybe
so I know her connection is going in and out.
Addiction or this.
So Tawana, you're coming in and out. I think the question that you're asking, Sam, is what was the reason for going in and out of therapy? Were you connecting, not connecting with people? What was going on for you that was causing you the in and outs of it?
So I started going into therapy in my teenage years, and I always had excellent therapists. I can say that, but and the reason I was going in and out of therapy was dealing with my sexuality. It had nothing to do with addiction because I didn't start using addiction to my late 40s, my early 40s. I had never done drugs, growing up or anything, but I was dealing with my sexuality, and all of those therapists were helpful for me. But I never had the ability to be gut level honest with any of them. And so they did the best they could with what they had to work with. I remember the very first therapist I had, Dr. Sarah Stevenson. She was a great therapist. She tried to help me. She did what she could. And I remember as I got older and I went into the workforce and the health issues, I was involved in Kaiser Permanente, their behavioral health programs. Benelda Shaheed was another great therapist. She was fantastic, but none of them could connect to me because of my inability to be honest with them. I didn't realize it then, now. So that's what kept me going in and out. And whenever I would, get into crisis, I would go back into therapy and, I would tell them how horrible my life was, how guilty I felt for, cheating on my wife and that kind of stuff. And they would do what they could to help me. And many of them was trying to get me to focus on my sexuality and, being this healthy person, but I was just incapable of understanding any of that. So that's what kept me going in and out of therapy. And it wasn't until drug treatment that I understood that I was in active depression and got the help that I needed through mental health services in the city, as well as Us Helping Us was one of the first places that really helped save my life.
So, Raven, how important is that? It sounds like Samuel is saying that one of the keys in this is your ability to be honest with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And really embrace treatment. I know I was talking to someone recently about someone they've been in and out of treatment, but they're never really honest about what's going on, and they never really invest fully in the treatment, so they aren't quite getting better. In fact, sometimes they're getting worse. But Raven, from your background, your experience, you know, I'm a mental health professional. You've been doing this certified addictions work forever. How important is that as a key to successful navigation in both mental health or substance abuse?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Samuel, for your lead and your story, and you being so honest, your transparency. You know, first and foremost, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. You know, you have many teachers in front of you, but you know, you won't draw to you until you're ready. Like you said, you had some phenomenal people in your life, but you weren't ready. And I think this is all probably stemming from, and this has been my experience because in my like 24 years, 25 almost, you know, year tenure of working in this field, I've worked with several gay people, lesbians, and transgenders, and then even a lot of typically so-called what they would say, you know, straight people would have these major identity crises that they've gone through, which one more time is extremely damaging to your self-esteem and self-worth and your pride, your ego, and your image. And so to come out and be honest about how you feel, how you got there, what your emotions are every day, and how you feel about what society says. Because see, this is major stigma stuff. You know, like you shared about. You know, wow. You know, you got to look at this God thing. Well, I'm supposed to be over here, so society's saying that this isn't right. Now I got to go out here and marry a woman to satisfy society so that I can feel like I maybe can live comfortable in this life with my attraction to men. Because I don't care, you could have married 10 women and you still have the same attraction that you have, because that is not going to go away. But you're still trying to satisfy society instead of be honest and true to yourself so that you could develop the trueness to be honesty and have truth with someone else. Very, very damaging to your inner self because you're living two lives. You're being dishonest with yourself and who you really are. And that's very painful to walk every day. And so now, one more time, I got to go out here and I got to do what society, you know, says is going to be better. And so along the way, okay, you're doing something mild, like, you know, smoking a little weed and drink a little this and that and the other. But when the cocaine hit the scene, which a lot of clients have expressed as one of the greatest escapes, I don't have to feel that pain anymore. I am now free to be me. I don't have to walk in your light, in your eyes, what you think that I'm supposed to be, how you think I'm supposed to move through life. I can now let the church go. I can let this go. I can let that go. I am free. That was your get out of jail free card. I am free to be me. And then you go do me. Well, so me has a hard time dealing with society because this still isn't real. And my life is going on a downward spiral, like it led you to that bus stop and that trash can. Because again, when you first hit the cocaine, like you said, it wasn't no dating affair. It wasn't no, we're going to hang out for a while. You said you fell in love immediately. And that's most people's experience with what you would call the drug of your choice. I've tried this and this and this. Well, and some people like seafood, some people like chicken, some people like pork. I mean, when you find what you really like, that is your drug of choice. People drug of choice, chocolate, Pepsis. I mean, whatever it is. So I'm just saying that, that led you to where you needed to go, and you felt better about yourself for a minute, which didn't last long, because after you found out, one of your close friends told you, hey, you're not built for this. You're not built for this type of lifestyle. And, maybe you need to rethink this thing and do something with your life. And it's so good to have somebody in your life who sees you as you see yourself, but you have to get honest with yourself. Well, you're not going to get honest with yourself until you drop your ego and your image. So you have to drop the ego and the image and put the pride in your pocket to say, hey, this is not me. This is not working for me, or this is no longer working. I got to do something about this, because I'm headed into destruction, or I'm headed to ultimately death. Addiction wants your life, and so for you to see that and to be able to get the help and come in and get back to yourself and accept treatment. And Earlene Budd is one of my very close colleagues. I know her very well. And, and then she put you on the right path, and for you to come into treatment and go to RAP, very, very good treatment program, and get the help that you needed to get back up on your feet and stand as the man you are and who God has called you to be in your own right, is a phenomenal experience. And for that, I am so proud of you. The work that you and the God of your understanding has pulled together, and you're getting ready, to celebrate again, and you've met some people, and you got some allies out there, and you got a good sponsor and a network, shows your dedication to what you're trying to do. Because, I mean, when you're called, you're called. I mean, I speak about it myself, the addiction field and substance abuse as a counselor is a ministry in itself. I mean, I've worked with people in their lives. This is about life and death. And I also preach what probably one of your friends and one of the guys you're talking about, I probably know him too, because we say it all the time, a grateful addict, a very, very, very grateful addict. As long as you can hold on to your gratitude, will never, ever, 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 ever use again, because you will not be able to forget where you came from. You will not be able to forget the bus stop and the trash can, because you do have the right. You do have the right and the choice to go back to that if you choose. If you choose. So as long as you keep putting one foot in the other and keep allowing us to help you, and keep close to everything that you've been taught and all the tools that you have, you are called in the ministry to help other people, and for that we're very grateful. And you just keep staying on the path that you're on, and we are grateful that you're doing well, and just keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for sharing.
I wanted to thank you again. I wanted to ask this question, Sam, a little comment and a question. You mentioned something you said, and Raven said it, I think, also just a moment ago. Raven said it first, I think, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And what that made me think about is it isn't just that the teacher will come, but it's that the student will choose the teacher when the student is ready to be taught. And here's the funny thing. If you're not choosing the teacher that is bringing you out, you're going to choose the teacher that's going to take you through. So you may be choosing the drugs, because the drugs right now are the teacher. You're chosen to be taught by the rough side of the mountain, by the challenges that are going to come from those things. And I'm saying that only to say, not for any guilt or shame, but for people to recognize that wherever you are in that moment, it is about the choices you're making in that moment and what you're going to learn from that process. So there's no reason to be shameful. Right. The shame, when society tries to unleash shame and guilt on us, it's an attempt to try to get us to change our behavior from something that society is saying needs to be different. But the reality is only you can determine when it's time for you to be different. And when something is for you to be different with, you'll make that choice to take the steps. And that there are lots of things out here to get help from. You've talked about your life and your experiences. Our previous guest talked about his life and experience. All of our guests this season have talked about these experiences. There's the circumstances that led them down the path that they've gone down those roads, into those places, into places of mental health challenge or addiction, substance use. Some people are just using to escape. We had one guest come on and told us about her ex-spouse who had several losses in her life, back to back. And then the going to the alcohol and the drugs was an escape from the pain of those family losses. So we don't have a place to judge people. And that's why we chose to do this program, is to say that we are standing for people, saying we're not here to judge. We're not here to decide what is or isn't for any particular person. But what we do know is that there are challenges that come from being in a cycle of addiction, from being out of, if you need mental health care, not getting the care that you need. There are additional challenges that can make your lives worse. And so there are things that can make your life better. And we want to bring those to you and say, don't be ashamed of where you've been and what you've done. And it doesn't mean it was good. I'm not saying you be proud about all those things either, but it's putting it in perspective and saying, I'm still a good person. You're still a good person. We are still good people, and we still deserve the very best in life. Sam, what would you say to someone asked a question about family? Let me see if I can find that question. That they asked about how your family, maybe your family how helpful was your family? Did family know and were willing to help when you were at your lowest point? The church that you left behind, what about them? Were they helpful? How old were you when your children? How old were your children at this time when you were going through these cycles before you stepped into recovery?
So it was rough on my family. It was a horrible experience for my family because they had known me for a long time as their pastor. They had known me most of my life as a preacher, but at this point they had known me as their pastor, and so it was difficult for them to comprehend what in the world was going on in my life that it would lead me to a life of addiction. They didn't have a problem with my sexuality. They had a problem with me acting like a crazy fool, when I was doing drugs. And my mother lost as much weight as I did. My sister was very hard on me. She was very hard on me because she had to pick up all the pieces that I left behind. My children, my mother, she picked it all up. And she had to let me live with her for a while. And she didn't want no drugs or even the hint of drugs connected to her house. So it was hard. It wasn't until I got clean that my family really began to affirm me and support me. Now, the church that I left behind was as horrible as they were when I was with them. And let me say that with no uncertain terms. Every preacher that I knew turned their back on me except one, who is my bishop and my dearest friend to this day. Every single one of them turned their back on me. Some of them I helped in their sexuality exploration, and they all turned their back on me. And I have no animosity toward them today because I understand divine timing and divine appointment. None of that. I'm just pointing out the fact that, unfortunately, religious people, and in my case, church people, we know this story, can be the most condemning and unforgiving people when the environment is supposed to be uplifting and forgiving and helpful. The way show of Jesus was the exact opposite of everything they did toward me. And so when I got clean, not a single one of them to this day, 13 years later, not a single one of them have ever reached out the phone and picked up the phone and said, "Hey, congratulations on your victory." Not one. I'm not mad at them. I'm grateful that all those people are out of my life because I found a whole new community of people to love me and affirm me and help push me to where I am today. But And as it relates to my children, they suffered. They suffered greatly. They were youngsters. They were young. They were still in elementary school when I started my addiction, and into high school by the time I finished my addiction. High school, because my son was in college. I was sober because I was helping him through his issues by that point. And they suffered greatly as a result of it. But the joy today is they honor me. They honor me, and they had me crying all day last Sunday on Father's Day. They had me crying all day long, and the tears was just gratitude that God restored everything. And restoration is just it's the only word I can use to describe where I am today, because it doesn't really define the excitement and joy I have in my life today. And let me say this about mental health, because it was clearly needed in my life. And that went to psychotropic medications for several years. I no longer take psych meds, but I was compliant the whole time I was on psych meds. And when I came into treatment, left treatment, went into transition, I stayed in mental health treatment. Up until just a few years ago, I moved from therapy into life coaching. I had a therapist. She became a life coach. I became a life coach. I'm a life coach now, and I have a life coach now. And I no longer need, quote unquote, mental health therapy in that defined sense. But the connectivity to mental health therapy, it was the balance that I needed between my spirituality and my mental health therapy. Because the fallacy in the Black community is Black people don't go to therapy, they go to church. And so as an ordained minister, I'm telling you, when you get your butt out of the pew, go to therapy. I'm going to lay hands on you. I'm going to pray for you. And I'm going to do my best to connect you to a therapist. Because there's a huge difference in spiritual counseling and mental health therapy. I am not a therapist. And I remind people when they come to me, I can help you on a spiritual level. I can help you. I can teach you to pray, read the scriptures. I can get you filled with the Holy Ghost. I can do all of that. And I was filled with the Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues and smoking a crack pipe. And so it wasn't until this sanctified deacon, she's a little teeny woman, this sanctified deacon said to me, baby, you need more than God. And she gave me therapy while I was in treatment, and then connected me to mental health services outside of that. And I began to find the balance. And that was the key for me. Medication is supposed to bring that chemical balance into harmony. And it was what I needed. Did we lose Darryl? Oh my goodness. Raven, it was what I needed in my life. And when I began to balance spirituality and mental health therapy, everything just began to work in harmony for me. I'll let you say something, Raven, so that I don't dominate the whole conversation.
Well, you can. You could have kept on speaking, but I do understand exactly what you're saying. It's all about a balance. It's a holistic approach. It's many things that's wrapped around one. When I said that, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear, but you had to get to the point where you were ready. I mean, they talk about in the program all the time, you have to be sick and tired and sick and tired and sick and tired and sick and tired of being sick and tired to do something different. A lot of times people that I've talked to, different clients that I've talked to in the field, when you talk about being sick and tired of sick and tired, there's another cliche in the program that says everything that I let go of has scratch marks on it. Everything. Because it's habitual. It's habitual. It's a life that you practice. I mean, for the most part, one of my teaching messages to clients when we talk about addiction, cigarettes is the probably hardest addiction out there, because you've had addiction. Most people that smoke cigarettes have been smoking cigarettes and cigarette affair was longer than any personal affair that you've had with anybody except your mother and father and your siblings. And most people smoke cigarettes longer than they've had any relationship with another human being. So You have to really be sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of living how you're living, being dishonest, being in denial about whatever it is, whether it's, like I said, identity crisis, whether it's, the depression, just not being honest with yourself, because I mean, the ultimate experience is to become comfortable within your own skin, comfortable with who
The
you
key
are.
to the key to my recovery today, and I say this without hesitation, is my spiritual connectivity and my connection to the resources of Narcotics Anonymous, and my refusal to be anything other than 100% honest with myself.
Sam, what is and then Raven, maybe you can jump in too. But Sam, Brian is asking, what can the community do to help individuals struggling with drug use? So, at the time when you were in your space, what were the things that other people around you could have done that, now that you're looking back, that might have been at least helpful for you, that might have been somewhat supportive of you, that might have helped move you on the journey where you ended up getting to? Are there things that people can do, or when you see someone that's going through an addiction, what is the best way to approach them? If you're concerned about your loved one, family member, or someone in the community, what can we do? What can people do really to be a positive influence in people's lives when there's an addiction or a need for mental health services going on in their lives?
Well, one thing that you can do is treat them with love and respect. And treating a person with love and respect does not mean you allow their behavior to affect you. But when a person who is struggling with addiction is in your presence, treat them with love and respect. Hug them, love on them. Give them something to eat. What you don't, it's so often we tell people what not to do. Don't cuss at them. Don't shame them. Treat them the way you want to be treated. Herein lies the biblical scripture to love your neighbor as yourself. Treat them the way you absolutely want to be treated. And from the religious community, prayers, absolutely, but not just prayers. Touch them, hug them, love them. Keep inviting them. The reason why Dr. Darryl Pulley is my bishop today is because I cannot count, and I say this, he laughs all the time when I tell this story. I cannot count the number of times I would hit that crack pipe and my phone would ring and it was him on the other end of the phone. I would never talk to him, but he always had the innate ability to call me when I was getting high. And he would leave a message, I'm just thinking about you, just love you. And if it was one time, it was 100 times. And so when I got clean, he was the only person I reached out to. Him and Reverend Kendall Brown, who was at the City of Refuge at the time. But Dr. Pulley was the person who was there for me in my addiction. So the community of people should never stop loving the addict. The addict is a person who is suffering. So why would you make a person suffer more? So that and what I also always say is, don't support their habit, support their recovery. And when I mean don't support their habit, I don't encourage anybody to give addicts money and stuff like that. You can feed them. My mother fed me all the time. She didn't give me no money. So it's those little things, that I think are so important. And a kind word and a touch and a hug can go so much further than a word of criticism and shame. That the weight of guilt and shame lasted years into my recovery process. So I had no problems kicking my own ass. I did that regularly. I needed somebody to teach me how to stop doing that. I needed somebody to show me how to love me. I developed an acronym called UGLY. You gotta love yourself. And I began to understand that the value of me loving myself allowed me to treat myself with compassion and let myself off the hook. Once I let myself off the hook, it didn't matter what anybody else thought about me. It didn't matter in the least. I learned how to love myself. I still love myself today. And what it also did was it enabled me to stop accepting behaviors from people that were contrary to what I was trying to live.
Amen.
So in other words, one of the things that I hear you saying very clearly is through the church, through community, through family, eliminating this idea of shame,
yes,
guilt, as a method to try to get people to change.
It don't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It's not working. So we got to get rid of this stigma associated with mental health and substance use so that people can get the help that they need. And I would venture to say that if more people, Sam, in your experience, have been more loving to you, that you might have moved through that cycle faster.
Especially church people in my case.
Especially the people
in my case,
who we think are the people that are supposed to love us the most.
Absolutely.
And that's the hard part. Is these are the people that are supposed to love us the most. Sam, I'm grateful that you came out to be with us.
You know I love you, brother.
Never stop loving and touching them. That's so basic. Thank you, Tawana. Our co-host Tawana is having connection problems, but she is on. You can also check her out on Real Ram T. Lee on her Facebook. She has some lives and she's been doing some amazing shows also. But Sam, thank you for sharing your story. We hope maybe we can get you back again soon and talk more. Maybe we'll get a panel of folks together and talk about where we are, where we were, and where we are now.
And just more than anything, and I always try to end with this because I know what my purpose in life is today. If there's any preacher out there listening to this, who's struggling with their sexuality, their spirituality, and addiction, Darryl knows how to reach out to me, but reach out to Reverend Darryl and the DC Department of Health, but don't live in that cycle of guilt and shame anymore. There is an answer to your problem. There is an answer to your question, a solution to your problem, and God has allowed you to hear what you're hearing right now just for this purpose. So again, thank you guys.
There is a balm in Gilead. There is. We don't have to ask the question anymore. There is, and we are here, and that's what this is about. We've got one more guest coming in with us. Kayla is our guest. Is our guest next guest with us yet? Oh my goodness, we have this great, wonderful story. Hey, Rhonda.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great.
Awesome. So my name is Reverend Darryl, and we are with Inner Light Inc. and Inner Light Ministries Thrive programming. We are sponsored in part by the Department of Behavioral Health and Health HIV. I'm with my co-host today, Raven Luckett. Our other co-host, Tawana Lee, is live with us on Facebook. She's not able to, her connection is having a problem, but she's still here, and we're still getting comments from her and questions. But we have our guest today, and our third segment for today, we have a wonderful young lady with us, Rhonda, who is going to share her story of her journey through growing up, through addictions, and just being. And she's a mom, and now, and so she's wonderful. I love her dearly. She's like I've gotten to know her over time, and so I'm grateful, Rhonda, that you chose to come in and share your story with us. A story that many people may not know. And so, Rhonda, you want to share your story?
Sure. Only thing I can say is I was 16 when I started getting high. It was introduced to me. I made a conscious choice to participate, and I honestly enjoyed it at the time. And I felt like, I'm young. I don't really have anything to lose. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I wasn't living at home at the time, so I did have restraints and things, but it was the way I did things. Nobody knew except for the people I was doing it with. I had prior to that, I had gone through some depression. I don't think I was depressed at the time, but I had gone through it, I guess, normal teenage adolescent stuff. And it just started out with crack and then evolved. I started snorting cocaine and eventually heroin and powder food. It wasn't as if I didn't have examples of how it can destroy your life and your health. I've known people, I had an aunt who was addicted to heroin, another person really close to me, I had examples of what not to do. But I made a conscious effort, yes, at 16 to do whatever I wanted to do anyway. There were adults around me who cared enough, even though they too were getting high, to ensure that no harm came to me. So I felt safe in that circle of people doing what I did. So it wasn't, I had some moments that were a little scary. There was a time when I was with an ex-boyfriend and getting high. Apparently it was more pure than I was used to. And my throat felt like it was closing up. And I thought that day, oh my God, I'm going to die. And I was praying, Lord, if I live through this, I'll never do it again. Of course, I lied, and God knew that. But as you can see, I lived. And it was the scariest thing ever. I really thought I was going to stop. I was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. Some time went by, but I started doing it again. And then I had another incident when cocaine that I had ingested, snorted, was pure. It was uncut. I didn't know. It wasn't told, so I wound up doing my usual amount. And with this, I should have done like half of what I normally would do. I was so sick for like a week. Didn't tell anybody. Well, 2 people knew, and they helped me. But that too was scary, but it didn't stop me. So, I just continued on going to school. A lot of times I missed school, especially in the morning because I was up all night. But I still continued on with my life to the best of my ability, and none of my peers knew. Everybody just assumed I was just like everyone else, as far as the group of people that I would hang out with is the young people, my peers. I don't know, I just eventually got to a point where I started saying, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, but I kept doing it. Not every day, but often. And then this young man who lived across the street had made a statement saying, I bet if I come back in 10 years, all of you guys, meaning like the young people my age, who they weren't getting high. It was just me. If they did, it was probably marijuana, which, most teenagers did. That really wasn't something I did on a regular basis at all. But anyway, he came and was talking with us, and, he was in college and doing his thing. And he's like, I bet if I come back in 10 years, you guys will still be sitting here in this same spot doing the same thing. And out of the whole group, I was the only one who said, no, I won't, that won't be me. And that statement stayed with me and helped me to decide, you don't want this life. You don't want to do this. You want better for yourself. And it was true, I did. So, it was always free. I never had to sleep with anyone for it. I never had to steal for it or anything. And that's the worst part. It's being readily available and not have to pay for it. So, with him making that statement and me making up in my mind that I didn't want to be like the other people that I saw, the other people that I was with. I didn't want to ruin my life. I was still young. This was between the ages of 16 and 18 that I did these things. So finally, like I stated, when he made that statement, I decided I can't, I don't want to do this. So when the neighbor came to get me to go and get high, I told her, that's okay. I'm stopping. I don't want to do this anymore. She was like, okay, and she left. And that was that. I was so thankful. I looked at myself in the mirror that day and I said to myself, you don't want this. You don't want to do this anymore. And I just stopped just like that. And I'm so thankful that whatever it was within me, it helped me to be strong enough to say, okay, this is it, and stick to it that particular time, along with that statement playing over and over in my head from time to time, that, we were going to be there doing the same thing. And again, my peers didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. And I was like, I don't want this for my life. I wanted kids. I wanted a family, things like that. I wanted to be a productive member of society. So I had to make a choice. Either continue down this road and wind up like some of the people that I see out here and hear some of the horror stories of what happened to them when they can't get the money to get high, or straighten up my life. And I decided I'm going to straighten up my life.
So Rhonda, what would you say to a young person that might happen across this video and say, well, you did it. You were young. Look at you. You grew up. You all right. You stopped. What are the perils or pitfalls that could happen between where you were and where you got to that someone else could go through that might make their outcome different? That you say, listen, you got to think about this differently. Don't think because I got out, it's all right for you to go do your experimentation and do all that. What would you say to a young person who's beginning to do that, feels the way you did at 16? I'm grown, I can do what I want to do, or I know what I'm doing, I can handle it. What would you say to them? And what did you say to your teenagers, to your kids?
Well, just don't do it. And it's easy to tell people not to do stuff because teenagers like myself at the time, I did it anyway. No matter what we tell, I could explain to them, the downfalls, because not everybody make it out. I could have had a heart attack and died. I could have overdosed and just went into a coma or something and never woke up, or would have brain damage. Anything like that, it happens. There are people, I've read stories of young people, let's say teenagers, doing ecstasy for the first time, died that same day. One pill, So those things do happen. Everybody's outcome isn't like mine, and you don't want to take that chance. And not only just health-wise, because it can ruin your health, but it can also ruin relationships. People will start not trusting you being around them because especially if they know that that's what you're doing. They won't trust you going out by yourself. With you being a teenager, you won't have the privilege of being able to go hang out, without your parent or whoever questioning your every move. It's a lot of things can happen. You just school, you can ruin your life, period. That's it, and you have a bad reputation because some people may not understand, regardless of your reason or reasoning for getting high. Some people would never understand, and they will constantly make you relive what you did in the past. And then if you're not strong enough to handle it and overcome it, then that's going to be another burden on you.
Tawana, I see our other co-host Tawana is back. Hey, Tawana, are you in a space where you can talk? I see you outside enjoying that sun out there. But
I can talk, but it's a loud car right now.
Well, you're a mother as well, right? And you've got you've got two teenagers, right? And I know, Rhonda, you're a mother. What would you say, Tawana, to mothers? Are there signs, Rhonda, that a parent could identify and see if they're not sure and they're wondering? What are some things you think might be seen, Tawana? As a mother, what are you looking for your children to see if they're doing something? Help somebody's parent out there who doesn't know what to look for or doesn't know what to do about it if they see something, or everything isn't drugs, right? Something is just could be other stuff. So what, Rhonda, what, Tawana, what?
Well, I wanted, Rhonda, if you could repeat the person whose voice you keep hearing. Who did you say that person was again?
It was a neighbor, a young man who lived in the neighborhood who had his stuff together and he just saw he was out there just talking to us because, every summer, every day we weren't really doing much, just hanging out. The people, like I stated, my peers, they weren't getting high. It was just me. But with him making that statement of saying that we're going to sit here, he can come back and see us in the same spot doing the same thing 10 years from now. I was thinking to myself, I don't want to be where I am now 10 years from now. So
Okay,
with
so
him
it was a
saying
peer.
that, helped me. Yeah, it was a peer.
Okay, so my question, Darryl kind of asked it, but more specifically, what would you tell other teens and parents of teens? What's the difference between you and other teenagers? Because teenagers are so invincible and you can't tell them anything. Well, their response is going to say, well, that's you. That's that person. That's them. That's not me. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, somebody can do it one time and then they die. But the response is still going to be, that's them. That's not me. How can we make this, a little bit more clear?
Honestly, I don't have a clear-cut answer for that. Only thing I can say is you can give them the example. Like for me and my children, I didn't tell them necessarily everything until later on, until they were practically adults, about the things that I had done. I did tell them that the downside of doing it, and I was just blessed with children who decided, yeah, that's not something I want to get into. But for people who are like myself and others, there's not much you can do. You can be there to just be watchful. You can kind of keep them busy with activities that's going to take their time from being able to do that, possibly. But sometimes, the saying, where there's a will, there's a way. The only thing I can say is just keep them and pray. Positive information, positive reinforcements for good things that they do. When things are not going so well in their life for them, whether it's home life or school, don't beat them down. Of course, it will take a parent who has the proper training or know-how, if you will, to just have the right words to say, because sometimes the one or two things that are negative that is said to someone like myself can cause them to say, you know what, if you don't care, neither do I. And that's an excuse to go on and do things recklessly, like getting high.
So Raven, Rhonda mentioned something, and so tell us, Raven, what are the things that we should say from your background experience as a certified addiction counselor and working in this field? What are the things you would invite people to? What can a parent say? What can a friend say? What can a community member say? What can someone say that would be the right things to say? Whether it helps or not is not where I'm going with it. But there are some definite things we don't want to say. So instead of lifting those things up, what are the things we do want to say, Raven? What would you encourage people to say to someone if they think they're in an addiction, if they know their child is doing it or someone they love is doing it? What should we say?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, Rhonda. Thank you for your share of your experience. And what I want to say is, first and foremost, is that, in the field, you are one of the exceptions. People that can just step back and walk away without having to go to therapy, go to treatment, go to detox. And from what I'm hearing, you've had a lot of not yets. Not yets mean in clinical terms in the program, or in treatment, they call it not yets. bad experiences. I mean, you didn't stay out there long enough to go through some things. Like you spoke about, a lot of the things, what kept you out there as long as you did is it was so accessible and it was free. And you didn't have to do ugly, degrading, demeaning things to continue to get or stay high. Well, that's where the addiction progresses. You stay out there one day too long, you cross the line, and that's what's ahead of you. And thank God you didn't have to experience any of that. Thank God you saw that in front of you and decided that's not what I want for my life. And when somebody pulled your coattail and said, hey, this is normal, this is the norm. 10 years from now, you sit out there. That whole statement that you shared made me think about when I used to sit out when I was a kid, and we used to sit on the front porches, front steps, and we'd say, that's my car, that's my car, that's my car. And we let the cars go by, and that's my car. Well, a lot of them sat out there until they made maybe 10 upgrades or versions on that car, and they still were sitting on the porch, still talking about getting that car and never got that car. So that's what that reminded me of. And somebody pulled your coattail, and the thing is that you were aware and ready to hear, Rhonda, if you keep doing what you're doing, there's a good possibility that you're going to be sitting here doing the same thing or worse 10 years from now. And it spoke to you in the back of your conscience. Is that what you want for your life? Is that what you want for yourself? So good for you. Good for you. So the thing today, to answer Darryl's question, would be, well, the only thing that you can give somebody is what you got. You tell them the truth about your experience. And even though you know some of the detriments in the further actions of continued addiction, where it can take you, you got to praise God or thank whoever you pray to and say, well, hey, I got out, but many people don't. This is what happens to people who don't stop when I stopped. This is what people do. This is what happens. And like I said, I'm telling you, you're an exception. That's not most people. That's not most addicts' story. They come in and enjoyed it and stayed out there or whatever. Okay, that's the beginning. That's that experimental phase when it turns into a little bit of abuse because, you just doing something. Let's say the abusive part would be you spent time in addiction where you could have been doing something a little more productive or responsible with the time that you was getting high, whether you spent money or did degrading things or not. Maybe you could have been doing something more productive with your time. So the abuse comes in very subtle ways, but it progresses. And then next thing you know, you're coming out of character and acting, in a way that you would have never thought that you would act, because addiction takes control and it takes you out of character, and you're going to get high by any means necessary if you stay out there one day too long. So thank God that you were rescued and that you heard the message and that you chose a different life. So all you can do today is try to defy, you need to try to discourage anybody, your children, anybody else that may be in that situation, and say, well, hey, okay, you might have gone through some things, or you may be getting ready to look like you're going through some things, but you could stop today if you choose to. You could make a choice to just stop today and give them some information. There's some information out here. If you don't think you can do it on your own, we got DBH's 24-hour hotline. We got churches, like our church, Interlight Ministries. We got, counselors like myself that are just waiting to help you. You got Zoom, you got, Narcotics Anonymous, you have Alcoholics, Anonymous to help you. I mean, right now with the pandemic going on, there's meetings all over the world, 24 hours a day, where you can just get some support. All of this is free. You know what I'm saying? So you just have to encourage them to want to be a better person, to want to do better, to want to live, because what this is about at the end of the day is living or dying. It's about living or dying. So, you
Raven,
know, you
Raven,
have to, yes.
let me ask this for you. So in terms of what can someone say to someone, like I'm not a person who's experimented with substance use or alcohol or drugs, right? I didn't grow up in a home where it was around me at all, literally. I mean, I know that we had when I got older. But my famous story in my family is that my grandmother made, I don't know why she did it. She'd never done it before, but she made 2 punches. But the one punch was sitting out there. She put something in the punch. And I was outside playing. I was thirsty as heck. And I went in, I filled up a tall glass with no ice because I don't like ice taking up room for my drinks. So I got a tall glass. I put it up to my nose. I started to take a sip. And I smelled something and I could taste a little bit on it. And I said, Grandmama, I'm screaming. She thought something was wrong. She thought I had hurt myself, something, for whatever. She's like, what's wrong with you? I said, what's in this punch? And she said, punch. But she said, boy, put that down and come in here and get this other punch, right? So, but I was older. I was a teenager by that time. And so I definitely was not for it, right? But so I don't have that story. I can't tell my teenager and my 4-year-old daughter now, be careful because here's what daddy went through. This is what I did. So I can't know it for myself. But what could I say to my 19-year-old? What can I say to my 4-year-old when she might get older without having to have the experience myself? What are some things that we might be able to say? And Rhonda, from your experience, what are some things that you think might have helped some of your peers, if they had been doing it, or even yourself, that might have someone could say who hasn't had that experience? I don't know what to say. I can't use my background as a reason to say it.
What I would say, Darryl, as a person like yourself, of course, who's never had the experience, or can't, I was speaking about, Rhonda in her situation, but in your situation, people who have never experienced addiction themselves and don't have a personal story to share. What I'm just suggesting is that you help to inspire somebody to be the best that they can be as a person, period. To try to inspire them in any way that you can. And if you see the detriment that the addiction is causing in their life in a very subtle way, it probably would be in your best interest to point out these things. Well, I'm noticing this. What do you think about that? Do you think that what you're doing is getting in the way of you here, there, or whatever? We're talking about finances. We're talking about responsibility. We're talking about being late for work. We're talking about taking off from work. We're talking about your bills under scrutiny. We're talking about you not being able to spend quality time with your family members, especially your children or your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever. So in very subtle ways, if you can try to have subtle conversations about how the addiction may be compromising in a damaging way, things are not looking good. You're not yourself. You're not grooming the way you used to. You're not eating the way you used to. You're losing weight. In these damaging ways.
So it's not about what you say. It sounds to me like what you're saying. It's about the kinds of questions that we can ask and how we ask them. Because it sounds like you're asking it in a not an accusatory way. You're asking it as an expansive. What can you think about?
In a subtle way, you have to inspire them and point out different things that you may see that might be damaging as a result of their drinking and drugging. Maybe they want to take a look at, and maybe be open to trying to do something and kind of, find out whether they think they need help, and then try to point out where the help is.
Exactly. And Rhonda, what do you think? And Rhonda, before you go, I do want to celebrate you too. I want to celebrate that you did what you did at 16, between 16 and 18, and that you had the strength of character to say to yourself, this ain't what I want, right? I want to celebrate that, because there are many people who have your story, and we don't hear their stories. We don't hear about the people that tried it for a little while and then said, no, I'm not going to do it. And they live to tell the day, and they can tell other people about it. So thank you for sharing the story, because your story is as valid as the person who says, I had 20-something years of addiction and I lost everything and all of that. You didn't lose everything, right? And so I think it's great to lift up you as well. But what are you thinking right now? You've brought us this story. You survived this those moments, those couple of years of exploration. What would you say to people? How do you encourage people?
Well, if they're already doing it, I encourage them by explaining, bringing up all the positive things, the great things that they are. If they're in a career already, explain how great they're doing in that, and that they didn't come this far and go to college or whatever it is just to ruin it by getting high. And that, the love, whatever that they have as far as from other people or just me specifically, that they have that. Just let them know that I'm here to support them. But honestly, I'm going to be totally frank. I have little patience for people who don't want to try. If the resources are there and counseling and everything, and you're like, okay, well, what was it that caused you to start? And if it was a specific thing, maybe like an injury or something, because some people take pills or what have you for pain and then get addicted to that. So it's like there's counseling out there. There's things you can do for detox. There's so much. If there's some type of mental anguish that you're going through because of some type of abuse or what have you, and you don't want to stop, I don't understand. And this is me being ignorant because I don't understand how do you not get to that point where you say, I don't want this anymore, or you say, okay, I don't want this anymore, and I don't know how to stop. I need help. So, and there's plenty of help, but you just don't take it. I have to love people like that from a distance. I'll call, I'll give positive affirmations or what have you, reinforcement perhaps. But it's difficult for me to understand people who continue for 20, 30, whatever years. And then they get to the point where they're broken down and doesn't have anything else left. They've had strokes and heart attacks and all types of things due to the drug use. And it's like sometimes they continue even after that. I don't know what to say to that other than I love you and keep it moving. For people
so in other words, part of the answer for some of us is know your limitation. Right?
Yes.
If you you don't have the patience for some of that. So knowing that you might not be the one to try to go help somebody in that long-term addiction situation, you might need to pass it on to somebody else. So knowing that, I think that's a part of loving our community is when we know what we can't do, and we know that, listen, I'm not the one to talk to you about that. I have no idea what it's like to be pregnant, not with a baby. I can be pregnant with lots of ideas and thoughts and energy and this greatness bubbling up on the inside, right? And the pain of pushing through to get past your own self to make something happen in your life. I could talk about that all day. But when it talks about pregnancy and what that means and the joy of birthing a child, I can't talk about that. So I might have to pass it on to somebody else who can talk about that. I can talk about the joys of being a parent and the wonderfulness about being able to share your life and all of that. But so I get your point. I think it's a valid point to say we got to know when we can stop and when we're at our place of saying I can't be the one to share this with you. And knowing that might be the difference between life and death for someone, because not knowing it might mean we say the wrong thing to somebody. Tawana, exactly. Go ahead, Rhonda. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the other thing too is that I think the same way I talk to my children when it came to sex or what have you, I kind of did the same thing with drugs. I just gave them examples and showed them this is what happens or could happen to people who do this, and this. And this is, if you want all these great things in life, you can't achieve that if you're doing this, because you may not even make it to that point. You may not survive. And if you do, you won't be in the best of health to even enjoy it or to obtain it. So I did go that route. And that's what I've told other young people. But other than that, it's not much that I know to say,
Tawana, again, thank you, Rhonda, for lifting up this other aspect. As we said, it just dawned on me when you told your story today that we don't really talk to people who did it and got out, right? As much to point out that there is that for those people who might be experimenting something, you're not sure that you can stop, that it doesn't have to become a horror story, right? So thank you for sharing that. Tawana, what any thoughts or comments you want to lift up? You always have some. I know. I see that. I see it in your smile.
Okay, I'm back now.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So first of all, I'm gonna try to move in closer to this modem. I got sidetracked.
Whatever's outside, we can't
I got sidetracked by that loud vehicle. So I too want to say congratulations to you, Rhonda. So the person that motivated you, do you know where that person is today?
I do.
Do you know where they are, and do they know the influence that they had on you?
I was never able to tell them specifically, but I was able to tell his mom, and she may have relayed the message. I'm not sure, and that wasn't until maybe about a year or two ago that I was able to talk to her about it. I don't know if I should say who it is. At any rate, I would love to be able to sit down or at least have a phone conversation with this person to explain the impact of him making that statement had on my life. Because still to this day, not just for drug use, but for a lot of things that would play in my head. And I would say, okay, that was motivation for me to keep pushing, to try and do better. Because I may not.
Hero. You could say his first name. He's a hero, so you can say that. At least people have a name that goes with your hero.
His name is Lamont.
Well, thank you, Lamont. If you ever see this video, thank you for what you did for Rhonda, and because you didn't only do it for Rhonda, but you did it for Rhonda's children. And you did it for the rest of Rhonda's family, and you did it for Rhonda's friends and the other people that love her. You did it for her church family and all the people that she will influence. You did it for her nieces and nephews and cousins and grandchildren that are yet to come. So, Lamont, we honor you and we thank you for being a light at that point in a young 18-year-old's life. So, yeah. Rhonda?
I'm sorry?
Rhonda, what else anything else you'd want to say?
I don't know. All I can say is, I think it may have already been said before, don't condemn young people or people in general, because you don't know what happened or what's going on in their life to cause them to start getting high. It's difficult because we're human. And the first thing we do is jump on the negative, like because of their behavior. While they're getting high, and then this certain behavior of always borrowing money and begging for whatever it is that they feel they need so they can get high, and that's bothersome to other people. And so again, if I feel that someone is going to take the money I give them to get high, I don't give them money. I'll give them whatever it is they are asking for the money but I won't do that, and I will do my best to support them and just send positive energy in their direction if I personally cannot do anything to help them. As far as talking to young people, it's like I said, we always tell them don't do it, and you give examples of what happened. When I was in school, they used to show this Scared Straight video. It was useless because I don't know, it was so mundane. It was every year, whatever, we were always watching this, and most people joked about it, and there was parts of it I just couldn't watch because they were talking about people having heroin overdose. Well, I did heroin, but I didn't do it, and I didn't shoot it. I did powder form. So it was useless because I did it anyway, So things like that may help some people, depending on the person's personality or their struggle. Again, you just do the best you can to always make it a positive word that you say to someone. Sometimes you have to get ugly with it, but not direct at them, just towards them so they can understand where doing those things can take them.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for sharing, Raven. Other thoughts that you want to as we begin to wrap up today's series of episodes. We've had 3 episodes today, which has been really exciting, really enlightening. We've met 3 amazing people, and I am so happy to be doing this work with my 2 beautiful, amazing, brilliant, and talented co-hosts, Tawana and Raven. You are joys to work with in this project. And so, Raven, any thoughts you want to leave for our folks today?
Well, in
And
closing,
maybe share some
I just
resources, Raven.
want to. I'm sorry.
And maybe also share some resources for people.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend Rhonda again for being an exception, and I'm so grateful that you're on this platform today, because a lot of times, with most addicts, we're talking about real serious endings, real serious bottoms, and every now and then you can run across some that have been able to put it down and walk away, and I commend you for that. But as we move forward, I mean, bottom line, when we're trying to inspire, and you were talking about the young kids especially, when we're trying to inspire them to be better, I kind of typically use, and if I'm sharing in a group, and then sometimes even in individuals, I use the movie Fridays as an example. Fridays, they sat around and smoked weed and kept procrastinating about what they're getting ready to do, what they're going to do tomorrow, what they're going to do later on today. And, addiction inhibits you from being your best self, from living your best life. And so if we can keep that message going, and at the end of the day, addiction is about unresolved issues. And so if we could build a closeness with them, if we can build a closeness with anybody who's suffering from any addiction or any beginning or serious mental health illness, what we really need to be trying to do is build a closeness with them of trust, so they can sit down and we can find out, what's really going on with them, so that we can point them in the right direction and for them to get the help that they need. Again, of course, we have the stuff at the bottom of the scroll, and I think that's DBH's 24-hour helpline, the access line, the 1-888-783-4357 is DBH's 24-hour helpline. We also have a Zoom meetings for Alcoholics Anonymous and AA. You got AA, and then you got Narcotics Anonymous, you got Cocaine Anonymous, you got, meetings all over the world, 24 hours a day, that you can access and get some help and tell the people what you need. Here's some stuff, and so that you're known that you're not alone, and that you're not the only person going through this stuff. We got churches like ours, Inner Light Ministries, where, all your church, your pastors, reach out. We got, all of us licensed in the field, counselors and therapists and CSWs, and everybody's just waiting to help you. But again, until you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of living like you're living, hopefully you can contemplate when you do get tired. We just want you to know that we're here for you, to help you in any way that we can. So we also have suicide hotlines. All of that stuff is on Google. And if you're feeling that depressed and you're scared that you might take your life or do something detrimental to yourself, please reach out and try to get the help you need, because you are somebody and we love you, and let us love you until you learn how to love yourself. I appreciate being on this panel today, and thank you so much for sharing.
Tawana.
All right, so good afternoon. So through all 3 stories that have been shared, and I thank each and every one of the guests for coming on today and allowing me to hear it. So we have the triangle and the 3 corners of support. You have your professionals, you have yourself, and then some type of community, whether it's family, friends, or whatever. And amongst all 3, 2 of those corners were met from themselves, and mostly family and friends, right? So to friends and family that are watching, like, they've all said someone in their life continued to support them and be there for them. They always had that one key person who was there for them, that voice in their head that kept circulating. So I just want to remind people to never give up. That's the story that they've shared, all three of them. Someone never gave up on them. Also, you know, we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So again, all people have shared that they have when they're in their lowest of lows, the first two stories, they were hungry, they were homeless. So until people have their food, water, and shelter met, don't look down on them and see them as their addiction that they are having. They are still a person. Continue to help them. Continue to give them what it is that they need. All of us need those bottom basic needs. You want to be upset and impatient because they're on drugs or whatever, they're not going to stop. Give them their basic needs. Mm-hmm. And everything else will eventually fall into place. And it's going to fall into place on their time and God's time, not our time. So that's what's most important. And with all that's being said, I want to thank you all again. And all the resources have been shared. And enjoy your day. You all are somebody special and you are here for a purpose.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us on these episodes of Thrive Live. I'm Reverend Darryl Moch with Inner Light Inc. and Inner Light Ministries, and I'm here with my co-host, Raven Luckett, certified addiction counselor, and Tawana Lee, licensed graduate social worker, working in the areas, all of us in the areas of mental health and substance use and ministry. And with our guests today, we've had Rhonda today, we've had Samuel, and we've had Christopher. And so thank you, Rhonda, again for being here and sharing your story. Thank you so much for everyone that's been with us. Thank you all for watching, for rewatching, for sharing, reposting these, for your comments that you'll leave with the videos. Send us your comments, your questions. If you want more information, you want to check us out on our Facebook page, Inner Light Inc. Thrive Facebook page, like our page, share our page. You'll be able to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also share our videos. And if you're interested in being on one of our shows and sharing your story, you can reach out to us at innerlightinc1@gmail.com. Innerlightinc1, INNERLIGHT1 at Inc1. I'm sorry. Let me say it again. INNERLIGHTINC1@gmail.com. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Kayla McIntosh in the background. Kayla is our tech person working with us, helping us to make our presentation a lot more smooth and a lot more professional. We thank you so much for being with us. Thank you all for joining in today. And we'll see you next later in a couple of weeks with our next Thrive Live shows as we go live with some new people telling you real stories about real life, dealing with mental health, substance use, the opioid crisis. We are working to end the stigma and the shame associated with these conditions and situations. And we are here to say that there is help out there. There is support out there for you. There is no reason to be guilty or ashamed of your experiences or your past or your present, if that's what's going on. We are supported in part by the Department of Behavioral Health, SAMHSA, and Health HIV with grants to help make this program possible. Thank you so much. And we want to lift up our Bishop, Rainey Cheeks, and our pastor, Pastor Wallace Henry, as Inner Light Ministries prepares to celebrate in the next 2 weeks, celebrating our 28th anniversary of ministry. So thank you all for joining us. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you all soon. Take care.